Are you against arranged marriages? Do you think parents should stay out of their children's choice of a partner? Well, maybe this story will change your mind. Bakari was already in love when his parents picked a wife for him. He ignored them and fought hard for the woman his heart wanted. But let me tell you how his decision and stubbornness caused a heavenly mess in his family, bringing tears, betrayal, and even death. The Achebes were the richest and most powerful couple living in a prosperous African village. Mrs. Achebe was a strong woman, always managing the family business and the household with a firm hand. The couple had 2 sons, Zay, the eldest, and Bakari, the youngest. Zay was serious and hardworking, always busy preparing to take over the family business. He had little time for anything else, and his love life was inexistent. But Bakari was different. He enjoyed a carefree life, relying on the comforts his parents' wealth brought him. He loved to party, relax, and spend time with friends every day. One day at a party, Bakari met a girl named Zuri. She was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen, and her smile drove him wild. They began talking, and the connection was instant. From that day, they spent every possible moment together. Zuri was charming, funny, and a great listener. She made Bakari feel special and important, especially since he often felt overshadowed by his older brother. He opened up to her about his dreams and his insecurities. Bakari thought Zuri was perfect for him, even though they didn't have much in common. Bakari came from a wealthy family, while Zuri's family struggled just to eat. They liked different music, different food, and had different life goals. But none of this mattered to Bakari. He was deeply in love. He did everything he could to keep Zuri happy. He bought her expensive clothes, jewelry, and anything she wanted. It was his way of showing her how much he cared. What Bakari didn't know, however, was that Zuri had her eyes on his money from the beginning. She played her part well, acting like the perfect girlfriend, but in truth, she was only with him for what he could give her. After a few weeks of dating, Bakari decided it was time to introduce Zuri to his parents. He wanted their approval because he was serious about marrying her. But when Mrs. Achebe met Zuri, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. After dinner, she pulled Bakari aside and said, "This girl is beautiful, but she has no ambition, no future plan. We spent an entire night together, and she didn't say anything nice about you. She only talked about what you bought her, and she makes you spend too much money. I don't think she loves you for who you are." Bakari was furious. "Mom, you don't know her like I do. You can't judge her after just one dinner," he snapped. His mother stayed calm. "Bakari, I can tell when someone's smile is fake. Trust me, this girl doesn't love you. She loves your money." But Bakari wouldn't listen. "I love Zuri," he said. "I'm going to marry her, and nothing you say will change that." What Bakari didn't know was that his mother had someone else in mind for him. Adanna, the daughter of her closest business partner. Adanna was pretty but shy. She had grown up with the Achebe brothers, and it was no secret that she had feelings for Bakari. But Bakari wasn't interested in her. He thought Adanna was too quiet and didn't match his idea of a fun partner. He liked outspoken girls with a strong personality, like Zuri. But Mrs. Achebe saw Adanna as the perfect daughter-in-law. She was educated, polite, and kind-hearted. As Bakari continued to spend more time with Zuri and talked seriously about marriage, Mrs. Achebe knew she had to act. She made a plan to get Zuri out of her son's life. One day, she went to Zuri's house with an offer: gold, and a house in another village if Zuri agreed to leave Bakari. At first, Zuri acted offended. She cried and accused Mrs. Achebe of misjudging her. But Mrs. Achebe wasn't fooled. "Don't play games with me," she said. "Take the money or you'll get nothing. If you stay with Bakari, I'll cut him off and you'll both have nothing." Zuri's tears stopped immediately, showing her true side. She agreed to the deal and took the gold without hesitation. That very same day, she sent Bakari a letter, breaking up with him. Bakari was devastated. He tried to find her, but she had already moved away from the village. After Zuri left, Bakari fell into deep sadness. He couldn't understand why she had suddenly broken up with him. Every day he thought about her, wondering what went wrong. He stopped going to parties and didn't feel like seeing his friends. He didn't eat much, didn't sleep well, and didn't care about anything anymore. A few months later, Mrs. Achebe came up with the second part of her plan. She convinced Bakari to take a long business trip to a distant kingdom. She told him it would be good for him to focus on business and forget about Zuri. What Bakari didn't know was that Adanna would be joining him on the trip. Mrs. Achebe told Adanna, "You need to learn about the business. This will be a good experience for you." At first, Bakari wasn't happy about traveling with Adanna. He ignored her, thinking only of Zuri. He refused to speak with her, eat with her, or even sleep near her when they stopped for the night. But Adanna was patient. One evening, after days of silence, she approached him and said, "Bakari, I'm really sorry for what happened to you. I know what it feels like to love someone who doesn't love you back. If you need to talk, I'm here. Anyway, we're stuck on this trip together, so we might as well make the best of it." Bakari was surprised by her words and felt relieved. Slowly, he started opening up, and over time, they began to talk more. As they continued on the journey, Bakari saw a different side of Adanna. She was smart, confident, and more capable than he had ever realized. When they arrived at the final destination, Bakari didn't really know how to negotiate a contract, so Adanna took over the role. She handled the business meetings with ease, negotiating contracts like a professional. Bakari was impressed. He didn't know she could be so outspoken and strong. After the dinner with the associates, Bakari got very sick from food poisoning. He couldn't get out of bed and felt terrible. Adanna stayed by his side, taking care of him. She gave him medicine and brought him food, making sure he had everything he needed. Bakari was surprised by her kindness and patience. She didn't leave him alone until he started to feel better, and for the first time, he realized how caring Adanna really was. After Bakari recovered, they started the journey back home. One night, while they were resting by a river, Adanna suggested they take a break and enjoy the water. They played and splashed each other, laughing like children. At one point, Adanna fell into Bakari's arms, and without thinking, he kissed her. He felt confused but also comforted. At that moment, he realized he had feelings for her. When they returned home, Bakari told his parents he was ready to marry Adanna. Both families were thrilled, and Mrs. Achebe was so proud to know that her secret plan had worked. Wedding plans were made quickly, and Bakari started to believe his parents had been right all along. What he didn't know was that things would not go as planned. The wedding announcement made the headlines in all villages. Rich and powerful people were planning to join, and everybody was talking about it. When Zuri heard the news, she panicked. She had spent all the money Mrs. Achebe had given her and didn't have a plan. Desperate to get Bakari back, she returned to the village the day before the wedding. When Bakari saw her, he couldn't believe it. Zuri told him that his parents had forced her to leave and that she still loved him. Blinded by his feelings, Bakari believed her. Furious, Bakari stormed into his parents' house. "I can't believe you did this," he shouted. "You forced Zuri to leave and lied to me so I would marry Adanna. The wedding is cancelled. I will marry Zuri or no one else." Mrs. Achebe, calm as always, said, "Zuri took the money and left you. If she really loved you, she wouldn't have agreed to leave." But Bakari refused to listen. "I don't believe you," he said. "Zuri told me the truth. She didn't want to go, but you made her. I'm done with this. The wedding is off." When Adanna heard that the wedding was cancelled, she was heartbroken. Her parents were furious and went to confront the Achebis. Zay, Bakari's brother, was there, trying to calm things down. Adanna's father angrily said, "Your son has humiliated my daughter. How can he cancel the wedding the day before?" Mrs. Achebe, seeing the potential damage to the family's reputation and business, was at a loss. But then Zay spoke up. "I'll marry Adanna," he said. Everyone turned to look at him. "I've always loved her. If Bakari doesn't see the treasure he's losing, I will marry her." Everyone was shocked. In reality, every word Zay said was a lie. He wasn't in love with Adanna, but he couldn't risk to lose the partnership with her family. This would damage his family's wealth, and since he was planning to take over, he had to do what needed to be done. But for everyone else, he was very convincing. Adanna's father agreed. The wedding would go ahead, but now with Zay as the groom. He went back home to tell his daughter the news. Adanna was shocked. "Do you think you can just marry me off to someone like that?" she asked angrily. Her father looked at her with concern and said, "Adanna, we can't cancel this wedding. People have come from all over the kingdom. Many of them are very wealthy. If the wedding doesn't happen, it will hurt our family's reputation. People will think you were abandoned at the last minute, and rumors will spread. It will be hard for you to find another husband. Please listen to me. Zay truly loves you, and one day he will inherit his family's business. Together, you could build something great." Adanna hesitated, but deep down, she knew she didn't really have a choice. Though her father seemed to understand her feelings, she knew he would do whatever it took to make sure she agreed. Finally, she accepted to marry Zay. The wedding between Zay and Adanna took place the next day. All the guests were shocked to see Zay as the groom, and everyone could feel the tension, but no one said anything. Adanna cried through most of the ceremony, heartbroken that what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of her life had turned into a wedding of convenience. Zay, seeing Adanna's pain, somehow felt bad. He promised to do everything he could to make her happy. He'd always cared for her, and now, as a husband, he would ensure she never felt hurt again. After that, Mr. and Mrs. Achebe had no other option but to agree to Bakari and Zuri's marriage. They only had one condition. Bakari had to work for his money and would no longer receive anything from them for free. Bakari agreed and married Zuri in a grand ceremony, just as she wanted. However, all his savings were spent on the wedding because his parents refused to pay for it. What Bakari didn't know was that this would be the beginning of his downfall. Meanwhile, Zay and Adanna began building a life together. Although it was an arranged marriage, their love grew stronger each day. Zay did everything to make Adanna happy. He sent her flowers, showed care every day, listened to her, and supported her. At first, Adanna was unsure, but soon she fell in love with Zay. What started as a simple arrangement blossomed into a deep and loving relationship. Zay realized how much he needed her love in his life, and they both grew happier together, glowing more with each day. But Bakari's marriage to Zuri quickly turned into a nightmare. Zuri showed her true colors right after they got married. She spent Bakari's money recklessly, buying expensive clothes and jewelry, and she didn't care about him. She treated him badly, demanding more and more. Bakari was no longer receiving much money from his parents, so he couldn't keep up with her spending, and this created tension in their relationship. Bakari couldn't sleep at night, started losing weight, and looked like a shadow of his former self. At some point, Bakari couldn't even afford his own house anymore. so he moved back with his wife into his parents' home, where Zay and Adanna were already living. Things were peaceful at first, but every night, the family could hear Bakari and Zuri arguing about money. One day, Mr. Achebe, Mrs. Achebe, and Zaya had to leave for a long business trip that would last nearly a year. Adanna was sad because she had become very close to Zay, and they couldn't stand being apart. They were perfect for each other. After they left, Adanna was alone in the house with Bakari, Zuri, and the household staff. A few days later, while Adanna was cutting flowers in the garden, she heard screaming coming from Bakari and Zuri's balcony. They were having another fight about money, and it sounded serious. During the heated argument, Zuri pushed Bakari out of frustration. He stumbled backward and fell off the high balcony, landing awkwardly and severely injuring his back. He became paralyzed from the fall. Zuri, realizing what she had done, panicked. She quickly packed her things and ran away from the village. Luckily, Adanna had seen the whole thing from the garden and rushed to help Bakari. He was taken to the doctors, who did everything they could to help him recover, but his injuries were too severe. When Bakari woke up, he remembered the accident clearly and was filled with regret. He learned that Zuri had left him. With no one else from the family around, Adanna stepped in as Bakari's caregiver. She helped him eat, take his medicine, and slowly walk again. Every day she was there for him, making sure he had everything he needed. As Bakari spent more time with Adanna, he began to fall in love with her all over again. He regretted not marrying her and wanted her back. He started sending her flowers and gifts, hoping to win her heart. But Adanna rejected him each time. She was loyal to Zay and had no interest in betraying her husband. One day, while Adanna was helping Bakari walk, he made a desperate move and tried to kiss her. Shocked, Adanna pushed him away. "I love your brother more than anything," she said angrily. "Don't ever try that again." From the moment, she refused to help him anymore. A servant had secretly witnessed the whole scene. She didn't say anything at the time, but had clearly seen Bakari's failed attempt to kiss Adanna and her firm rejection. Bakari, bitter and angry, decided to take revenge. He spread rumors that Adanna had been unfaithful to Zay with him. He even sent a letter to Zay, who was away on a business trip, claiming that Adanna had betrayed him. When Zay and his parents returned, Zay was furious. He went straight to Adanna and accused her of cheating on him with his brother. Adanna was heartbroken. She tried to explain that the rumors were not true, but Zay was too angry to listen. "You always wanted to marry him, didn't you? And me being away was all the chance you needed," he shouted. "You betrayed me, Adanna. But guess what? I never loved you. I only married you to save my family's business, and I wish I haven't done this mistake." Zay was saying all that out of anger. It's true that he didn't love Adanna at first, but he ended up being deeply in love with her. But hearing those words felt like a dagger in Adanna's heart. One more time, her heart shattered and she could barely breathe. She didn't try to fight back. She didn't have enough strength for that. She took the decision to leave the house and return to her parents. Meanwhile, the tension between the brothers became unbearable. Zay and Bakari argued fiercely, with Bakari pretending to be the victim, claiming that he truly loved Adanna. But soon, the truth came out. The servant who had seen everything stepped forward and told the parents what really happened. The servant revealed that Bakari had made up all the rumors and that Adanna rejected him when he tried to kiss her. Zay was shocked. Realizing how deeply his brother had betrayed him, Zay confronted Bakari one last time. In a heated moment, Bakari finally broke down. He admitted that he had made up the rumors because he had fallen in love with Adanna when she was caring for him, and he couldn't stand seeing her happy with Zay. Bakari's parents were devastated. They couldn't believe their own son had caused so much pain and damage to the family. In the end, they disowned Bakari for his lies and manipulation. He was banished from the house and left with nothing. Zay felt guilty for ever doubting Adanna and tried to win her back, but Adanna refused to have any contact with him. She was done with the Achebi family. As for Bakari, who once had everything, he was now alone, without his family, wealth or reputation. But both brothers had one obsession: to win Adanna back. And this fight for her will lead to the loss of one of them. Follow for part 2, and until next time, take care and keep the stories alive.